Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Vickyverse. I am here tonight with Dean from DA Talks
Hello.
and and George Alexopoulos, the creator of Mari Sue and some other fabulous works that we'll try to get into tonight.
Hey,
George,
what's up?
hey, if you want to introduce yourself, George, everybody pretty much knows who Dean and I are. So tell us a little bit about you.
Oh, I'm never good at that. I guess I draw indie comics. I've been drawing indie comics for over 10 years, on and off. My actual profession is not in comics. I've never had a formal debut, except I did one book back in 2006, and then I was never able to get published again, so I've been self-publishing ever since. I work in games development. Yeah, I don't really know how to answer that question. I'm sorry, but yeah.
Okay,
Like
then
walks on the beach.
let's make it easy. How'd you get started in comics?
Okay. Well, I loved anime and manga and games growing up, and the natural next thing you do after that is do lots of emulation. So I drew a lot growing up, and I thought one of the best ways to practice is to draw comics. So I read a lot of strips, and I just thought, what's the best way to repetitively draw the same thing over and over and keep getting better at it? So throughout elementary school, middle school, high school, I just drew comics all the time, and I showed my friends at the lunch table and stuff, and we all worked on the story together, and I try to make them laugh and that sort of thing. And by the time college rolled around, I was self-publishing my first graphic novel. I dropped out of school, and then I've been drawing comics forever. I just never had much luck publishing them because I guess I've been sort of in the manga side of things. So I don't know. American comics publishing, as I'm sure everyone knows, is not the healthiest in terms of industry, and manga has always been sort of this fringe thing in America. So it's just been weird getting published. But yeah, I've been drawing comics since forever.
You had a web comic, right?
Oh, several. Do you mean the strip?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
you had a long ongoing strip,
Yes.
didn't you? Yeah.
Yeah, it used to be called Bite Size. Currently, it's called Problematic. You can everyone can read it for free on Webtoon. Actually, it's a black and white 4-panel strip in the style of like Peanuts or Calvin and Hobbes. Yeah, that's been going on for about 10 years. I've taken a long sabbatical from it, but I'm sure I could go back to it as soon as I find some free time.
Oh, very, very cool.
Yeah.
You have a new campaign right now, which is
Yeah.
a follow-up from Mary Sue,
Yes.
which was one of the most beautiful indie comics out of all that I have seen. It was simply gorgeous. I love your use of color.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's fabulous. And I dug Mary Sue. The character herself. Yeah. I liked the play on the Mary Sue trope, of the girl, the girl who's good at everything without trying, and how she's not really good at anything, but she is in her head.
Yeah, there's a lot of different dimensions to a sort of character like that, because you want to, part of playing with the trope of the Mary Sue is she's good at everything, obviously, but how do you put a spin on that so that it's fresh and interesting? And I call it friction in a story. How do you create friction where punching a character, let's say really hard, like One Punch Man, does not necessarily mean she wins the fight? And I guess we can go into the specifics of the story whenever, but
yeah, we can whenever we can
sure.
do that now if you want.
Oh, I'm just I have to apologize to everyone. I'm such a bad salesman, so I don't know how to formally pitch the story or anything, but in fragments, I can just, for instance.
Oh, can I interject for 1 second? So you're a One Punch Man fan?
I liked the first season of the anime. I read some of the manga. It was okay.
Okay.
But I would say I appreciate what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I didn't think the second season was as good as the first, but
Yeah, I hear mixed things. And I mean, I had my huge anime phase. It kind of fizzled out in my 20s. So now I'm sort of just picking and choosing the best series. Like I'm going through JoJo right now.
oh, okay.
Yeah, but One Punch Man as a post manga, I don't know what to call it. Like post shonen genre wise, like he's so overpowered. I don't know how to even describe it.
Yeah,
it's
I
sort of a
getcha.
deconstruction of Dragon Ball and all that stuff. So it's
Mhm.
weird as a veteran of manga to watch it. It's like, how does he actually challenge himself? And season 1 was cool, I guess.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Yeah, season 2 just wasn't so great.
There's a lot to study there. I don't mean to be too scattershot.
No, you're good.
No.
I'm sorry. I interjected.
Interject. Yeah, I don't watch a whole lot of anime or read a lot of manga. So it's never it's never been widely available in a lot of the places that I've lived. You know, you're not going to find a lot of manga out in rural North Carolina.
I see.
And,
A lot of us growing up read. They called them scanlations. So it's kind of like illegally translated. Not illegal, but I don't know, Berserk, Death Note, and stuff like that. Some fans were translating it as it was being published in Japan, and it wasn't being published in America at the time. So a lot of the fans were sort of catching up on the story in real time, and the Japanese the Japanese publishers were getting really pissed off in America, saying like, you're stealing money from us. But they weren't publishing the books in America, so that's the only way we could see it. Fan subs of anime, stuff like that.
Yeah. I did have a friend, Hide, who used to go once a week down to this little dinky Japanese stationery store. And he'd have and they'd order them for him from
cool.
Japan. Yeah, but they were all in Japanese.
He could read. Yeah.
Yeah, he was from Japan. He was living here, and I couldn't read them, of course. I mean, I'd look at them, but the art was cool, but it's kind of hard to follow if you can't read any of it.
Yeah, it's like a different dialect, comics wise too.
Yeah,
the way
it really is.
If I'm just choosing panel shapes and the way I compose a page, manga artists or Japanese artists and American artists, if you give them the same script, it'll be completely different the way that they tell that story, especially with page counts. A manga artist will take 40 pages, whereas an American artist might take 10 drawn pages. It's like a completely different language. It's fascinating to look at the differences. But unfortunately for me, that also creates problems with my page counts, which I keep running into, where I have a script that's maybe 7 written pages, 7 to 10, and it converts to a 70 page drawn story. And I'm staring at these thumbnails, like I'll do the thumbnails over 2 days or something. And I'm like, how do I actually find a way to fund this? And I'm not sure. I don't know how to pitch that to anyone. Of hey, readers, do you want to pay a crazy amount of money for a story that an American creator can tell over 10 pages? But I'm trying to be all like cinematic, and if I drop a glass of wine and it shatters on the ground, it might take 3 pages because it's dramatic.
Well, in a way, that's part of the part of what was just gorgeous about Mary Sue, was it didn't feel like it was constrained too much by how much, because there's not it doesn't feel like a lot once you read the books and you break it down, there's not a lot that actually happened.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it takes up so much space, and it's so beautiful that as you're going through it, that's completely and totally not something you're even thinking about. You just get drawn into these beautiful pictures and how they're telling the story slow, even though like there's one big fight in the second book, really, basically.
Yeah,
but it takes the entire book.
Yeah. The manga, let's say, discipline, whatever. I'm being more melodramatic than I have to be, but it's sort of based in cinema, the old cinema, where it's a sequence of pictures, just pictures. And if anyone's read Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud or Making Comics, those are two of my highest recommendations for any comics student or lover of the medium. He talks about different panel-to-panel transitions. And manga allows itself to use more page counts, more space. Let's to go back to I drop a glass on the floor. A lot of things might be happening to me internally as I'm dropping the glass. Like, let's say a long lost lover walks through the door and I haven't seen them in 20 years. And it's like, oh, it's them. And then my hand, drops the glass and slowly it slips out of my hand, and then zoom in on my eye and then zoom in on the person walking through the door. And it's like, it takes 5 pages because it's such an emotional moment that a manga artist says this needs to be 5 pages long because every panel is another snapshot, microseconds. And each one is pregnant with meaning and drama. So it's an interesting. That's what I grew up reading anyway. So it's interesting to hear feedback like yours, which is very flattering, and I love it. Thank you. About how nice it looks and all that stuff. And it's funny because I grew up reading black and white stuff, and only recently have I started doing color comics. And the biggest prohibiting factor to, like, let's say the reason I canceled my Kickstarter, if anyone doesn't know, I tried to do a Kickstarter for Mary Sue before this one. I canceled that because I'd realized that my page counts were beyond out of control. I had a story that was like 90 something pages, 100 pages, where barely anything happens in terms of action for the next Mary Sue story. And I can get into details later, but she's chasing after a certain person, trying to track him down. And she goes and talks to people he knew, his family. She investigates his life, and there's no fights. And in manga, that's totally fine because the character is kind of learning. The stakes are going up. There's drama building. And then how could I ask my audience, let's say, to pay for a color book? It could have been $30 for 3 books. It's a crazy price, insane. For a character who's basically wandering around town being a detective for 90 pages. But the script sort of writes itself, unfortunately. And I could force things to happen to, like, oh, I can do a flash forward where she fights a guy. And then it's like, oh, how did I get into this situation? Let me rewind. And then, do that whole, she gets into a bad situation. And now it's lots of boring. And okay, so now she's, walking the plank again. Maybe I'm being too... I feel like I'm talking too much. Sorry.
No, not at all.
There's a lot of storytelling problems. And I think, cost is the biggest problem for me right now. The books are insanely expensive to produce because they're selling in such small numbers. And there's really nothing I can do about that right now. And the story is telling me that it needs to be this many pages. So unfortunately, I'm kind of defaulting to black and white books in the meantime while I'm building more of an audience. So when I did this Mary Sue campaign on Indiegogo, the current one running, it's sort of an experiment because I got a bunch of people on Twitter to follow me in the past few months. And I wanted to run an experiment and see if those people are enough to convert into a successful campaign without any of the usual stunts, let's say. And I want to see if that works. If it doesn't, fine. But I'm still working on my black and white books, thinking that while I'm waiting to build an audience, I still want to be making books and developing my house style, let's say.
Right. So you're doing something called Tackle?
Yeah, currently it's 2 short stories. There's Olympus and Tackle. Those are just as pure manga as I can do. The genre is called shonen, so it's like kind of in the Dragon Ball Naruto vein.
Yeah, Dragon Ball, Naruto, Hunter x Hunter, all that good
One
stuff.
Piece and all that stuff. So it's sort of that demographic where it's like kind of high schoolish, middle schoolish, bunch of, Olympus is about a bunch of boys climbing a mountain basically, but it's not really about that. And Tackle is about, more high school drama stuff. A bunch of bullies find, well, I could tell the stories another time, but anyway. You see, I could get into the muck for hours talking about this, but I'm doing those as sort of side projects. And then, of course, there's Bad Dreams, which is on the back burner. But that's
because
you see, that's the thing.
Loved that book.
Thank you.
I thought it was fabulous. And then, of course, it ends at the cliffhanger. But it was beautiful. It was haunting. The your use of gray is just amazing. Even though it's a picture and it's black and white and it's a hallway with all of these candles in it, it's still, even though it's black and white, it still looks like it's lit, and it was gorgeous. I mean, you could just imagine, you could see the brightness of the flame like in the picture, and it was stunning.
Oh man, it gets me excited to hear that. Like I kind of want to drop everything and go back to issue 2 now. But
I want you to drop everything and go back, except for the new campaign, and go back to issue 2.
I don't know how to resolve this problem though. Like there's all these stories that I'm just burning to do, and I wish I could do nothing but those. I don't currently have enough of an audience to support any of these full time, so that's weird. But I don't know, like because of Corona, an odd opportunity has presented itself where it's like, hey, just do nothing but comics for a few months. And I'm like, okay, I'll do 4 comics at once. Why not? So, all right. So Bad Dreams can happen. I just have to put certain things on the shelf. And anyway, I got to do Olympus first. I got to do Tackle. I have to do those. And then if it's either Mary Sue next, if it gets funded, or I'll go back to Bad Dreams. And I mean, they're already written. That's what drives me nuts. I know what happens in these stories, and I've already done the thumbnails, and all I have to do is like render the thumbnails. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah. I could publish the thumbnails so people can read the story. It won't look as good, but I could tell everyone exactly what happens in the next 3 issues. If for anyone who doesn't know, Bad Dreams is a 4-issue mini story, based off an illustration I actually did on Mike Miller's channel. Involving a monster and a guy with a sword, and but it's about way more than that. I did the first issue, and there's 3 to go, and I just got to find time to do them. I don't think they sell enough copies to, like, I could just take 2 months off, 3 months, and just draw them like crazy, but then I'll only earn like a few thousand maybe, which I don't mean to sound, I hate the way I just put that sentence together. I'm sorry, but like a few months.
It's not enough for you to live on. It's not.
I can't. That's what I meant. I'm so sorry.
And the cat, right?
I really want to do this full time. I just don't know how right now, and that's nobody's fault but mine. But these comics will eventually come out. I promise. It's just a matter of me finding the time to do them. That's all.
Now, Mari Sue 1 and 2, and Bad Dreams, as well as a book called Paris, which I'm gonna have to put off getting because I will be backing your Indiegogo, and that's not gonna leave me with much. You're gonna get my entire next paycheck's budget for crowdfunding.
I'm sorry.
No. I'm looking forward to it. I want that book so badly.
I want to send you Paris for free now.
And all of those are available in George's Etsy shop. I dropped the link in the description. They're actually the Indiegogo his Patreon, his Etsy. They're all in the description, and I dropped the link to the Etsy and the Indiegogo in the chat. So if anybody wants to go check those out. What's really cool is the books that you get from his Etsy shop, he prints them himself.
Yes.
So
And the Indiegogo.
and you're going to be doing the printing on this Indiegogo too?
Yeah, as long as the quantity is under, I guess, like 500 or 1,000, something like that. I don't imagine I'd sell more than that. Yeah, I could just print all that quantity at my house in like a couple of weeks. So
when you'd launched the first Marisu campaign, I remember seeing something in the description about you were considering maybe doing it, or I don't remember if it was in the description, but you were considering maybe doing them as 2 issues in one book. But then
yes.
Along the way, you decided that you were going to print them yourself. Yeah. Not send them out to a professional printer, but do it at home. What was the aha moment that got you to that place?
Mm-hmm. So initially, when I've been doing my self-published stuff years before this, I would print bite size in Paris. I used a third-party printer, which, you make your PDF, you send it to them, they send you a proof, you approve it, or you make your modifications, and then they send you, however many books that you ordered, right? That's the usual way to do this. Mm-hmm. And that's fine. It takes a lot of time, unfortunately, and the cost can be pretty high because, they UPS ground you your books, and it could cost hundreds of dollars depending on the weight and all that stuff. And it's very expensive, time consuming, and I don't like the lack of control. So also tied to that is that I used to work at a print shop for quite a while in my 20s. And I had access, I realized, to the same equipment that my third-party printer was using. Because they sent me a catalog basically saying, this is the equipment we use. I'm like, wait a second, I've worked with that exact printer, basically. And I realized it's the same kind of printer you can find at like a Staples print center, like the copy machines, the laser printers. And when you order small quantities, like under 1,000, those are the machines they use. When you, if anyone used a third-party service, they would use a laser machine, basically. There's something called offset printing. Long story short, that's for huge quantities, and it's really fast, and it's really inexpensive, but that's for like over 2,000 books or something like that. Anyway, so I realized instead of using the third-party service, I could fulfill a dream of mine to have all my print equipment at home. And because the Mary Sue project got funded, I'm like, wait, I'm sitting on this printing money that instead of sending it's, whatever, X $1,000, I can take that exact same amount of money that I would give to my third-party printer and buy the exact supplies I need to make the books at home. And now I'm basically printing my books for free at home. Not for free, because the equipment and all the materials are really expensive anyway. But basically, I can print my own books from home. So I realized, I can just use all my experience, pool it all together. And so it took a lot of trial and error, but I managed. No one's complained about the quality of the books. In fact, they say it's quite good.
It is quite good. Yeah, it's comparable. Yeah, they are positively comparable to any other books that I've received that were done by a professional printer.
Yeah, because of the way technology is nowadays, like back in the 80s, maybe people didn't have access to these machines, but nowadays you can't tell the difference between something that's done on my printer versus what you'll see at a comic shop. And there are certain flourishes that I can do, like laminating my covers or doing oversized books that make them feel way more, less disposable, I would say. I don't mean that in a pejorative way, but I think these books feel special.
Yeah, it's like a craft comic, like a craft beer,
Yeah, exactly. It's something that I personally put my hands on and made from start to finish. The only thing I am not doing is delivering the books. But yeah, from blank page to finished book, it's all me.
Right.
I occasionally have some help, but that's it.
Yeah, I think when I ordered Bad Dreams, it was maybe like 2 weeks from the time I ordered it till I got it at home, which is, a little under that maybe. I actually expected it to take a little bit longer, but it showed up and I was so excited.
I think there might have been even a delay because of COVID, but usually if I have the books ready and printed, it takes me like 2 days to ship.
Right.
Because it's all I have to do is walk over to my printer, print one copy, and assemble it. It takes me 10 minutes.
That's a fast process.
Yeah, that's the beauty and the convenience of this. It's how do you put it? It's like a little dirt bike that maybe can't go super far. Like if I had to print 1,000 copies, that would be a huge pain.
Yeah, of course.
But then again, I can solve that in other ways too. But yeah, I can make really short run printings. Like I'll print 10 books at a time and just have them on my shelf behind me so that when I get orders on Etsy, it's like, oh, I'll just scramble over to my shelf, throw them in boxes, slap some labels on them, and out the door. Because Etsy is actually really cool. If anyone's listening, I do encourage getting an Etsy store, shop page or whatever, because you can print your labels through Etsy. And all you do is hit Control P, and like they come out, you slap the label on, and you just put it in a mailbox. It's so easy.
Wow.
So it's really convenient. The whole process is super easy. I've been using Etsy for years. And Indiegogo is kind of a pain because then you have to use like stamps.com and stuff like that, or the post office. There's a lot of, it's more laborious. But anyway.
Anyway. So let's go ahead and let's talk about your new campaign. It's actually for 2 different books, right? It's Marisu Thalassania.
Thalassania, yeah.
Thalassania. Totally slaughtered that. I got your last name right, and I can't pronounce that. But
it's all Greek, silly. It just means the land of beaches. That's stupid.
No.
No, not at all.
I don't mean that in a bad way. Silly, stupid. Yeah, Thalassania is it would be issues 3 and 4 of Mary Sue. Before it was just Mary Sue, issues 1 and 2, which I've called the first 2 issues are called Missed Shot. So I've combined both of those. You can buy both issues 1 and 2 as a set, and 3 and 4 as a set, because those both go together, basically. Issues 1 and 2 are pretty much one story, and 3 and 4 are one story. I just have to break them up because of printing limitations. I haven't mastered a perfect binding yet, which is what most books are. You glue the spine, you put a paperback on it. I'm not perfectly satisfied with the quality of that when I do it from home. So I'm just presenting them as staple saddle stitched. It's called stapled standard American comic format.
All right, and there's the first story, the last. I'm not even going to try.
Thalassania.
Thalassania is what, 76 pages?
That's good. That's a
Mm-hmm.
that's a good amount of pages.
It's again, it's going to be like you said, Vicky. It's going to probably move very fast, but and unfortunately, the price has to be what it is. I'm not happy about that. Someday, I'd like to lower the prices, but yes, it's a good, healthy 76-page story. It's a full story. It ends at the end. Unlike Missed Shot, some people gave me feedback that they're disappointed that I'm not immediately following up on that story. But I can explain why sometime. But
yeah, no, explain. Go ahead.
Oh, sure. Actually, can I ask though? Do you think spoilers are a bad idea? Because I can just tell what happens in that story since it already happened.
I probably not too spoilery, but you can explain what the you're not going to spoil the first 2 books. They've already been out. If people want to get them,
I'll do that then. In long story short, right? You got a character, Mary. She's a derp, and she's on a luxury cruise to celebrate the retirement of her mentor, Dr. Masaka, and some pirates attack the luxury ship. She's got this nice little romantic relationship with a janitor named Songbird, and turns out he works for the pirates. And she was going to take them down with a powerful laser blast and take down their ship. But as they're getting away, she noticed that Songbird was on the ship, and it's like, oh no, that's the guy I like. And she doesn't blast them away, and he gets away. The pirates get away. And so she did all this damage to the ship fighting them. And it's spectacular. It's fun. But unfortunately, now she's stuck paying the bill for all the damage that the pirates did and all the damage that she did. So that story ends, missed shot, with the pirates getting away. And now, unfortunately, I had a choice as a creator to say, like, does she go after the pirates now? Which I can do. Or does she actually go and do her day job now, which has nothing to do with the pirates because nobody paid her to go after them? So Thalassania is what happens the day after that, where the doctor is still retiring. He's getting his stuff together. He's packing them in like the U-Hauls, basically. And she has to go off on a job. And this story, Thalassania, is she's been paid by a royal family on like a water planet to basically kill a monster, or so she thinks. And as much as she wants to go after the pirates, there's no money in it, so she can't. And it's like a little metaphor or something. But actually, like, this is what would have happened the next day anyway. So she gets involved in this whole royal plot involving succession, Game of Thrones-ish, and here's this. The joke is that she's the problem solver that you don't want to show up to solve your problems because she'll make it way worse. And when she shows up in Thalassania, she does indeed make things way worse. And it's funny, and it's also sad, and it's action-packed. And then at the end of the story, assuming she survives, she's off to fight another day and continue her day job as a contractor, a space contractor. And part of the fun, as we're looking at the on the screen there, it's like an underwater thing, and her whole thing is that she wears these different power suits. She's got 12 of them, and each one does something different. So now she's going to be embarking using an underwater suit, and each one has different strengths and weaknesses, and that's lots of fun to. She's not the best pilot either. But the suits are hyper overpowered, but she herself she's not the best at this.
So she's got like good equipment that's like extraordinary, but the person using them is less than equipped to use them.
Yeah, it's like a little tongue in cheek because it's a Mary Sue story. She does not get the guy at the end because it turns out he's a bad guy, and she gets to fight all the bad guys. She can blow everything up that she wants to, but there's going to be major consequences, so she can't do that either. And part of the fun of the story is sort of, so say she's overpowered because of her suit, which she didn't build, she inherited it. Part of the fun of exploring the story is, despite having these crazy overpowered abilities, she's actually even more limited than you would expect her to be.
Yeah.
Because there are consequences for everything she does.
Yeah. No, that sounds fun. That sounds like sounds like a lot different than you'd expect from the name.
Yeah, I get some people. Maybe it was a dumb name because
I think it's clever. I think it's clever personally.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I do too. I like how it plays on the trope, the whole Mary Sue trope.
All right. I wouldn't want to worry people into thinking like I'm actually like making fun. Like, it's very important to me, for instance, to get lady readers. Maybe people roll their eyes when I say this, but like a part of the manga thing is that it has as many lady readers as guy readers, and it was important to me to have a lady main character to accept the challenge, let's say, of a non-stereotypical lady character who has major character flaws. Maybe she's strong, but that's not that's not a feature of her character. It's all her limitations, and somehow she has to overcome all of those to achieve her goals. And I don't know, every story that she'll go on, assuming people want to keep reading this story, is her meeting a new limitation in her job, in her world, and personally, that she can't just punch her way to solving every problem. In fact, punching things hard actually makes her problems worse.
Yeah.
So it's about, she has to be smart about it and learning to be an adult kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, I honestly, I can't remember where it was. I heard you talking. It was recently, and I don't know if it was on another interview that you did, or if it was something on your channel. And forgive me for not remembering, but I listened to so many different videos and live streams and stuff. But you were discussing how you go about coloring things, and it was such an interesting kind of idea and process. It's so much different than everything else I've heard, because usually people go ahead and they pencil it, they ink it, and then they color it, but you don't do it like that, do you?
No, you might have been. I talked to Nasser recently. That might have been it.
That's what it was. It was on Nasser's stream.
Yeah. So I trained for many years in black and white. So you would study things like black and white film, especially the classic German expressionist film noir. The way that they would light scenes is fascinating, and the way that you would compose panels. There's just a lot of rules that you learn in black and white because it's such a simple, one-dimensional discipline. It's either, let's say, 100% black or 0%, and there's all the grays. There's only 100 values that you can play with when you're doing black and white. So that's one dimension of color. So the only thing that you're trying to do when you compose a panel, and I use the example on Nasser's stream, let's say I'm drawing a portrait of myself. I'll do me in a 0% black, and then my background will be 100% black. And that's so my silhouette is nice and strong. So you can clearly see the contrast between foreground and background. And you might want all the background elements to stay between 100% black and 50%. And all the foreground elements might be between 50 and 0%. And that's just so you can tell the difference between the background and the foreground. So those are basic compositional things that you would do in black and white. And so when I started learning color, teaching myself how to use color, I actually had to sort of unlearn a lot of black and white principles and then relearn them in color. So in color, you're actually... So brightness is the black or white. That's one dimension of color. And then there's also hue, which is actual color: red, green, blue, purple, all that stuff. And then there's saturation, which is either 0% or 100%. So there's hue, saturation, balance. And all of those colors, there's something called color theory. They all play with each other in the same way that black and white play with each other as contrasting elements. So if I'm drawing that same portrait of myself, one of the classic comics ways of coloring is to say, I'm going to make the main character in warm colors and then the background in cool colors. You might have heard that one before. Mm-hmm. Because, skin is colored by blood. So that's a reddish, yellowish hue, somewhere in the peach spectrum. And of course, depending if someone's darker skinned, it's still in the peach spectrum. It's just darker in terms of brightness and less saturation, but it's still in the same hue. So anyway, those are warm colors. But when you're coloring, when I'm coloring, what I'm really looking for is just contrasts. And I'm trying to tell the reader where they need to be looking. If you draw a line from, let's say, the top left of the page, going all the way across to the right, going down, the way that you would read a book. When I compose a page and when I choose my colors, I'm trying to guide. There's an invisible line saying, okay, now I want your eye to go here. I want your eye to go here. And there are certain things on the panel that I'm trying to highlight to create a map for your eye to go from top to bottom, and now jump to the next page, go from top to bottom. So when I choose my colors, I'm trying to actually use contrast tricks. I'm not choosing colors based on what they actually are in real life, basically. So Mary's hair is reddish orange in real life with normal colors. But in some panels, it might be purple for no reason. But I've decided in that panel it needs to be purple because it's an intense panel. There's lots of action. So I'm going to use pinks and purples and reds and greens because those are powerful, like, hey, pay attention to this panel colors. So I choose my colors based on the intensity of the action in that panel and on that page, not what are those colors in real life. And I noticed those coloring tricks a lot in American comics from the 90s, and especially from artists like Mobius, if anyone's familiar with that guy, French artist. So yeah, I choose my colors based on feeling more than what they actually are in real life. And I think I get a lot of feedback of like, oh, your colors are so interesting. I'm like, that's as much a surprise to me as to anyone else because I don't have plans. When I start coloring, I never have a plan of this is what color I want this panel to be. It just sort of, I let the panels surrounding it tell me what colors that panel needs to be. And I don't ink, at least Mary Sue, I don't ink that traditionally. I just kind of do rough pencils and then I start painting the way I would do concept art for like video games. So that was another happy accident, I suppose. I did early tests and people said that was an acceptable art style. I wanted to make sure that, wait, so you guys are okay with the comic looking like this, right? And everyone said yes. So I'm like, okay, I'll just do the whole comic like this then. And everyone says it's fine. So I'll continue in that style.
I thought the art style was like pretty unique. Granted, I don't know much about comics, but I haven't seen anything really like it. And then I really like the way you do eyes. That might sound weird, but I like the eyes are very unique and it stands out to me.
Mm-hmm. No, it makes sense because a lot of manga, again, going back to the silly disciplines of the East, what you want to do is prioritize expressiveness over realism. Mm-hmm. So again, going back to Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud, he talks about symbols versus realism. So if I draw, have you read Watchmen?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
But I do know about it.
There's a smiley face. Basically, it's an emoji, right?
Yes.
That's a better example. If you look at an emoji, what you're really doing is looking at a symbol of a face. You're not looking at a real face. Mm-hmm. But if you boil down the elements of a face, like you could look at a wall outlet and see a face in it, right? Mm-hmm. And Tim Lim is actually, I keep forgetting the word. Tim can tell you better than me. There's a word for it where you see the face in the moon. It's like a projection of our imagination onto things so basically it's symbols. So manga is actually, if you look at symbols versus realistic pictures, and there's a slider there, comics goes traditionally, American comics goes towards the realism side of things, whereas manga is more towards the symbolism and expressiveness on the left side. So that comment with the eyes actually makes sense because a lot of, I don't know, even if you read Mary Sue, she makes a lot of distorted faces. Like she gets invited to the ball and she's like, oh man, I'm going to go get ready. And she makes like a crazy funny face. And it's totally unrealistic. It doesn't make sense. But in the comics context, it's like, oh, that's how she feels on the inside. She's making that silly face internally. Yeah. So that's what we see. And,
so by the way, Tim says it's pareidolia.
Yeah, pareidolia or something like that. Yeah. He taught me that word, and I keep forgetting it. I'm so sorry, man.
No,
I'm gonna write it down.
You're good.
Pareidolia.
Yeah, no, that's always what I've always appreciated that about like mangas and animes was like the expressions. They're unrealistic, but that's how you understand how the character feels or is acting.
It's like a mirror effect. I may have been talking to Tim about this when I was on a stream a while ago. Like if you have a baby in front of you and you smile at them, they'll smile at you because they're it's like a weird brain thing of there's a mirror reflex.
Mm-hmm.
So if I draw a picture of a smiling person smiling directly at the camera, maybe the reader will feel like, oh, there's like a weird projection. I feel happy because I'm looking at someone smiling.
Mm-hmm.
So comics and manga have that power, according to Scott McCloud, where if I draw a character making certain expressions, so Mary's a very carefree, happy, fun character most of the time, maybe reading the story makes you feel like her a little bit. And so comics has that interesting power. It can do that. So that's something that I'm always experimenting with.
No, it makes sense.
That's the panel right there. Yeah.
I keep stopping this screen share because I don't want to spoil the book, so I have to go scrolling for the picture, the pages, the PDF.
Yeah, that's the panel right there.
Yeah.
Where it's totally ridiculous, her face. But I mean, anyone who's ever gotten invited to the ball knows that feeling of, oh man, that exact expression. Oh my gosh, I hope they don't see how excited I am, but this is how excited I am. And
only you get to draw it because
it's a lot of the color choices again, a lot of the facial expressions. It's, I think, capturing a feeling is more important than the realism. It's, I don't know, a lot of different artists have different philosophies on that sort of thing, but I think it's more important to I allow distortion, I permit it, because it feels good. So even if a panel's not finished, if I decide, wait, stop working on this panel, it's perfectly fine the way it is. I just get a feeling, so I stop working on it. Otherwise, I could polish something forever and, take 50 million years for the book to come out, which I can't afford to do. So.
No, I think it gives it a certain quality that I can't really describe very well. But when you read the book, it feels more heart. It feels more like it comes from the heart because it is. I mean, it's very technical. What you're doing is you can tell it's technical, and some of the panels are just crazy. Like when she's in the movement panels, especially with all the movement lines and all of that stuff are just insane. But you just feel so much of the emotion in it as you read it and as you look at it.
Especially when drawing, there's a sort of, I use the word freshness, which I stole from someone that I don't need to name right now. But there's a certain freshness that I like to try to maintain as I'm drawing, where if I overwork a panel too much, it feels stale. It feels like clay if you've ever played with clay when it dries, and you have to keep re-wetting it, but it kind of feels gross and crusty, and it doesn't feel alive anymore. But all right, so let's say I do loose pencils and thumbnails, and I don't want to tighten the pencils too much because I'm not handing it off to an inker or a penciler. I'm it's one artist throughout the whole image. So I don't need to tighten the pencils too much because I'm just going to go right into my flats, which is applying color. And then I'll go directly into painting. And that's where I'll refine the character if it needs refinement. So a lot of my illustrations are just polished thumbnails that I kind of clean up. And there's natural distortions that it's like a loose lump of clay that's wet and then you just let it dry because it just feels alive, where it took a while for me to get comfortable with that. But there's just something about, like, even though, like, for instance, in that panel, her spine has like a million extra vertebrae right there and it doesn't make any sense, but it feels right. So it was just a sketch and I'm like, no, I'm not going to keep refining this. Just leave it alone. It looks fine. And
well, you see you actually see the movement of it better, because I mean she's not static, you know, and she's flying through the air, and
her suit changes from panel to panel too, where like there's no reason her suit there should be able to bend like that. It's metal, but it feels right. So I'm like, screw it. Let's have fun. That's what she does. She does a backflip. And then it just makes sense. It looks fine. I love the colors there. It just works.
Yeah. Then it's gorgeous. I'm not too big a fan of the overly rendered art.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, technically it's fine, it's great, you know, but looking at it in a comic is just not satisfying. It just feels, I mean, it's just kind of there, and it can be brought up with colors and, you know, things like that, but too much detail can be really distracting.
It actually doesn't, and this is, again, I sound like snooty.
Anything, you know?
Yeah, part of manga is that you're supposed to read a panel really fast. Like, you're supposed to spend maybe a few seconds max per panel and then move on to the next one. In American comics, you're supposed to stop and savor every detail. And what happens unintentionally is that American readers don't have a lot of space to let their eye rest. So really, it's a weird thing with color because you don't want to spend too much time per panel. Like, let's say I try to spend no more than 8 hours per page. I always go over, but 8 hours, let's say. If a person's going to spend a max of 5 seconds looking at that panel, I don't want to spend more than 5 hours drawing it because there's no reason. No one's going to stare at this panel like it's a page at a painting at a museum. Panels in comics are meant to be read quickly. You scan them, and then maybe later you can go back and look at the details. So American comics...
That's how I read them. Yeah.
Because it's sort of like a movie. It's like a flip book in your head. But overly rendered panels, unfortunately, are so dense. Like, I was tweeting about this the other day. I guess I could say this now. I was reading JoJo on one day, and then I was reading Batman White Knight the other day. And Batman White Knight felt like a chore to read for some reason. And I think it was because of the density of the panels. And maybe it's just my personal taste, but I had to force myself to read Batman. Whereas JoJo, I could not put it down because every page was like turning itself. It was going so fast. Whereas I would spend 10 times more time reading every page of Batman for some reason because there's so much dialogue, there's so much detail per panel. It almost works against itself, it seems. But that's just
our brains, you know, absorb things weirdly. You know, I mean, when things get overly rendered, I think it actually confuses the brain, and
it's too much information.
It's way too much. It's way too micro and not enough macro.
Yes.
You know, so it does kind of, it causes like a little stoppage in there, and your brain freaks out a little bit. It's one thing to look at just a picture, you know, if somebody's drawing, if it's just like a poster or a painting or something like that, and to have that be detailed. But especially when you're going from one panel to another to another to another, I think your brain gets overloaded. Your input sensors kind of freak out.
Yeah, because what happens also with the American comic system is, let's say the inker does their panel a certain way, and then the colorist does it a certain way. There's a disconnect between the two minds where they might be thinking about different things of how to guide the reader's eye from across the panel. Whereas the panel you showed earlier, Vicky, with the backflip and the pink and the greens with the electricity, there's a very clear line. If you draw a line from the top left of the panel across the bottom to the right of the panel, there's direct. Oh, yeah. So if you start from the top left, the electricity is creating a line across her body down through the pink. Your eye is supposed to bounce at the bottom of that platform, go up to the top right, and you see him hitting it, and then you go down like an N shape. And I had the luxury of, because I drew and colored it, I'm like, no, I need the eye to go exactly in this direction. There's no pauses. So like all the stuff underneath her with, there's the engine room and all that smoke and all the bridges and railings and stuff. I don't actually want the reader's eye to stop there at all. I want you to actually not notice that stuff. I just want, you would notice if it wasn't there, but I don't want you to actually look at it. So it's colored in such a way that you're supposed to ignore it. So all the bright colors are in the foreground. Her figure and his body, which is pink for some reason, even though it's supposed to be blue, against the green pipe that's exploding. So there's a very direct line by design to make it's sort of like I'm greasing the wheels. I want you to read that panel as fast as possible to turn the page. Whereas I think an American comics artist might justifiably say, I'm going to put a million details in this page. Like, again, Batman White Knight, if you look at the Joker's cell that he's locked in, there's all this memorabilia from the 1960s Batman show and from the Batman movies and everything. And my eye says, wait, I want to look at all these little details. And now I've spent a minute staring at this panel, and now I'm tired. I don't want to turn the next page. I don't know. That's how I read American comics, so I'm not a good example. But anyway, I try to engineer a page, for better or for worse, to be read as fast as possible. So unfortunately, the downside to that is the books are hella expensive. I don't know how to solve that right now, but I will someday. If I get super famous, I can lower the price of my books.
Well, it's I don't know what the shipping was, but it was, I mean, it's
$5-ish.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much in line with most crowdfunded comics, but it's also a lot more pages than most crowdfunded comics. I mean, it's 76 pages, 2 issues, for $25. Isn't as expensive as you keep trying to make it out to be, in the grand scheme of things.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm getting a 24-page comic for, let's see, the last one I got was like $10, I think. Mm-hmm. It's 24 pages, $10 versus 70 some odd pages for 25. Isn't that out of bounds? Yeah.
Okay.
So you've got to stop trying to sell it as expensive, because it's not. As far as
obviously. No, but what it really is I always wonder, because like maybe I didn't make as many sales this time for a million different reasons, but maybe the price is too high. That's always something I'm wondering about. Like Bad Dreams is $8 because it's a black and white book, and I think that's a beautiful sweet spot for prices. But a black and white book obviously costs less to print, so a color book is unfortunately it just costs more. I'm not actually making more money on Mary Sue than if I sold a copy of Bad Dreams. So,
but Bad Dreams is also a lot fewer pages. It was only.
Is it?
Yeah, it definitely
30
is.
36.
36. It's definitely not in the 70, something range.
Yeah.
So once you take into consideration page count and the fact that it's colored, I mean, the inks cost you a lot more money. A colored book costs more, period. So I think it's at a good spot. Mm-hmm. I think for me, when it comes to crowdfunding, for me, it's a matter of and this sounds a little bitchy. It's a matter of page count, and what they're going to charge me for shipping, because that tends to be where it falls for me. I don't know about anybody else, but like I just got a comic. I say it was 32-page comic that was shipped to me from Australia. And it cost me, after the exchange rate, it cost me around $18. You know, and that was international shipping. And that was, you know, that's right at my price point.
I see.
You know. So
I think I once shipped something to Australia that was $40.
It's much cheaper the other way.
It's crazy.
Yeah, the U.S. Postal Service is screwy. It's much cheaper the other way. Yeah. So,
well, here in the States, we've got media mail, so that's a huge boon to anybody who's trying to just send a comic book. As long as the book doesn't have advertisements in it, they say you can just send through media mail, which is a flat $3.
Yeah, I had this one. This came in a Gemini mailer inside a bubble envelope, and was delivered to me by DHL. I can't remember the last time I saw a DHL guy, which was really kind of strange.
Ouch.
Because, like I said, I live out in, you know, I'm an hour from the nearest big in quotes city. So I don't, you know, I might see UPS once a week.
Yeah.
My post office gets more UPS deliveries than I think anybody on the business street does.
The important thing is, I suppose, if a book arrives safely.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know. I think shipping times have picked back up. For a few months back early this year, it was terrible. But now I think most people will get their books in a week or so if they order from me. If they're in the States, I should say.
Yeah, everything that gets delivered to me, I think, takes a trip all the way around the state before it finally gets here. It's the craziest thing. Whenever there's a crowdfund and they say all the books have been sent, I'm always the last person to get it.
Right.
So, and Dean's being really, really quiet.
Oh no, I was just reading the chats. I left a funny comment, but I don't feel like reading it. It was inappropriate. But it was good. It took a lot of my thought process. My bad.
Yeah, Dean doesn't have much in the way of thought process.
I don't have very many brain cells is the problem.
You guys are fun to listen to, though. I have your channels on in the background whenever you put a new video up.
Oh, wow. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Honestly, like a lot of the people who just make talking smack videos or whatever, just like talking about whatever, like it's a huge advantage. Not advantage, but it is what we listen to when we're making books. I know a bunch of creator types who just listen to your guys' channels to hear like what's going on these days in the old circles.
In the old circles, yeah.
You know, like it's good to know who do I avoid these days and that stuff like that. I don't mean to go into that subject. I'm sorry, but
no, it's all right.
It's good to have people like you guys at least keeping us informed.
Well, we want to.
I'm sorry.
We want to do it in a way that's fun and funny instead of it just being all about drama.
Right. Or just black-hearted depression when I hear about all like who's ruining whose life this week, and I'm like, oh my god. I don't.
Yeah.
I want to be able to smile again and be happy to be part of comics. So it's good to have a little bit of humor once in a while.
I have found that I've been enjoying myself more in the indie comics scene and on indie comics Twitter. I blocked a lot of people.
Yeah.
Which really helped a lot. With everything that's been going on, they're distracted, so they leave me alone. You know, and so I've been able to focus more on the creators that I like to follow, the books I want to promote, you know, and not feel overwhelmed by all just the garbage.
And most of it is garbage. So it's good. I guess what I always say is I appreciate other people who are willing to sort through it for me. Because you guys make it palatable.
We're the garbage men.
I cannot tolerate, like, I can't tolerate the raw sources. I never go to the raw source.
Yeah,
it's difficult sometimes.
Yeah,
that can be painful. That can be painful, and I will admit there are a couple of the channels that I'll listen to, not usually live because I'm at work, and I'll listen to things on like double speed because it makes it funny. So
right.
just to get a little, hint of what's going on, but fortunately people will send me stuff so I don't have to do a whole bunch of searching, which is a big plus.
Nobody sends me anything. No,
and nobody likes you, Dean. Yeah, instead Dean gets DMs. Dean gets people's DMs somehow. Me, I just get, tweets and video clips.
Yeah, no, people send me stuff all the time.
Dean gets dirt. They send him dirt. They send me
ask
funny.
nicely. That's all you got to do. Just ask. Vicky once asked me, "How do you get people to send you DMs like that?" And I said, "Just ask nicely." That's
It's amazing how much you can achieve by just being nice. Or you know what? Polite. How's that?
Yeah.
If there's people who dislike me or disagree with me on many things, like, just, you can be polite. It's fine. I'm not going to hurt you.
Yeah.
But a lot of people just want to, I'm not going to get into it. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. Dean gets more peener pics than Vicky. Who knows why? Just ask nicely. That's all I'm saying. That's all you got to do. But nobody gets as many peener pics as Ashley.
Yeah.
Just gonna slide that one in there.
Just got to get one in before the night is over. But do you mind if we open up a little bit of questions to the chat, George?
Oh, not at all. No, please.
All right. If anybody has anything that they want to ask George, just drop it in the chat and we'll ask him. This has been fabulously awesome, George. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for extending the invitation. I'm always amazed. I don't mean to sound cheesy, but like, grown adults actually want to spend time talking to me. I'm like, wait, that's really flattering. Thank you.
I think it's flattering that, wait, I mean, obviously you're talking about Vicky. You said grown adults.
Definitely not Dean.
Humans
it would have been very flattering had you have considered me as one of those grown adults, but
humans. I assume you're human. But even everyone listening, it's like, wow, I can't believe people actually want to hear the crap that I have to say.
So we have one, Irkes. Can we talk about George's 4-panel political comics? They're wonderful. You've been doing quite a bit of those.
Yeah, I actually started collecting and printing those. So if it's all right, on Etsy, they're called shit posts. I'm sorry, can I curse?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I should have asked. Yeah, shit posts is the book. I started collecting those into printed form. I do a bunch of political stuff. I guess it's political, but mostly it's about people who are full of themselves and they are their own punchlines. So that's what the comics are about. So unfortunately, that seems to be a majority group right now who think they're hot stuff, and they make fun of themselves. So I make little comic strips just kind of highlighting how silly they are, and people seem to like those.
That Nancy Pelosi
the cover of shit posts,
yeah, is just freaking amazing.
Because
it looks like her and it doesn't all at the same time. Yeah.
If anyone's wondering, she's like covered in spirit energy in the illustration and ripping that piece of paper that Trump gave her like it's the devil. She's ripping it in half like, ooh, this is you. I'm getting you now. It's just too funny.
And Bobby Dank was wondering about the high funding goal, if you don't mind talking about that.
No, I don't mind at all.
Yeah, because it's 7,500, right?
Yeah, the Kickstarter was actually like way higher, and that was crazy.
Yeah, it was.
But here's the thing. Here's the problem. So a lot of artists, let's say I'm a writer and I want to outsource my art to another artist. I could ask for art from, so everybody has a different page rate. And some artists around here in the States might ask for more money than if I hired an artist in another country, let's say, where the exchange rate is different. So I might get more mileage if I hire an outside artist. But unfortunately, I'm stupid enough to live in one of the most expensive states, in one of the most expensive countries in the world. And my costs are way too high. And that's nobody's fault but mine. But unfortunately, it's really expensive to, like, as a full-time job, like, just basic living expenses are really expensive here. And yeah, that's why the books are so expensive, basically. If I calculated the amount of time, like 76 pages, right? That's a page a day, roughly, at a healthy pace. If I give myself weekends off, let's say that's maybe 3 months of full-time production. Just drawing the pages, not actually assembling and shipping. So I have to pay myself 3 months worth of income. $7,500 is pretty high, but then I also have to consider manufacturing costs. So putting the books together, I did a lot of math and a lot of accounting stuff where if I pay myself to draw the books and I pay all my materials, when I calculate all the net profits that I would make, it's actually kind of above minimum wage, but not quite. So unfortunately, I'm not really paying myself that much. So $7,500 is quite a shocking number, but I also want to be able to earn a living. So I apologize. It's a lot of money to ask for. But I can't, unfortunately, draw full time for any less than that right now. It's just where I'm stuck financially. That's where I am right now. So sorry.
No, I can understand that. Dean apologizes. He had to step out. He says he'll be listening to the rest of the stream, but he had to go.
Sure.
He said it was a pleasure to talk with you, and he'd love to chat with you again.
Yeah, I'd love to. Thanks for co-hosting.
Yeah. Horatius Cockles. Hey, Horatius. As someone who's only just learning about Mary Sue, can you give him your best elevator pitch about why people would love it?
It's about a overpowered exosuit pilot in a colorful version of space where all the rules are different. There's breathable air. There's gravity all over the place. And she travels from planetoid to planetoid and solves people's problems. But usually when someone hires her, they regret it. And it's funny, it's humorous. And there's lots of like secrets in the story of like, where did she get her suit from? And yeah, I already butchered it.
Yeah, it even starts off with a mystery that I hope you end up getting to at some point regarding her parents.
Oh yeah, that will be addressed in Thalasania. So if anyone's curious, yeah, she's hanging out with her mentor, Dr. Masaka, who was a partner of her father. And her father's missing. He's not in the picture for some reason. And it's like, he built her suits. And where is he? Where did the suits come from? How did she get to be the pilot of the suits? And it's one of those little mysteries where I want to leave breadcrumbs throughout all the issues. And eventually, if I ever get this far, it will, accumulate into like, she has to find out the answer right now. So someday we might get there. I have all that written out. It's just a matter of finding funds, which who knows?
You'll get there.
We'll see.
You'll get there. One way or another, we're going to get there.
I'll publish it in some form.
Yeah.
Written or drawn.
And then Cabbage Head was wondering, what is your favorite anime?
Oh, I can't answer that.
Yeah.
Cowboy Bebop is the stereotype answer. Kids on the Slope is amazing. Rain check. Check with me on Twitter. I'll think of the answer while I'm sleeping. I know I'm going to think of the answer.
And Ray Bear wants to know what color socks you wear.
I'm wearing black socks right now. Yeah, I get a lot of comments about feet. The way I draw feet, maybe.
It's the slippers. It's wearing socks and
slides.
It's
the Greek. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, like if anyone wonders, I wear socks and sandals because I'm Greek. Yeah. So everyone can cancel their orders right now. I know. You don't want to own a book from a guy who wears socks and sandals.
And Ray Bear also wonders if there's any comic that exists that you would love to rewrite.
That I've written?
Or just in general?
Shoot, I don't know. Comic that I've wanted to like more, but I didn't. I have no idea how to answer that.
Yeah, some
I
tough
think
ones.
Watchmen could be better. I don't like the panel layouts, but yeah, I have no idea how to answer that. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And another one from Bobby is wondering if the books would ever be, if you don't get funded, if you would eventually make them available on your Etsy.
I'm going to say yes. And there's an asterisk. I'm not sure what the final product will look like. So let's say right now I can commit 8 hours a page. If it doesn't get funded and I have to draw the comic on my spare time, maybe I'll say I'm going to spend only 2 hours per page. And maybe I'll lower the price in that case. Like, you'll be able to read the story and all the colors will be there, but maybe it just won't be as polished. I wonder if people would want to read that, or if the book was in black and white. I've tried asking that, and people said no, it has to be color. So I will. Yeah, it's a hard answer. I don't know. I would like to eventually draw all these scripts in a finalized form somehow. I don't know. I really don't know if this campaign's going to work out. I don't know what I'm going to do afterwards. It's work beckons. I'm a freelancer, if anyone doesn't know. So it's either comics or freelancing. I can only do one at a time, unfortunately.
And Winglish Shinigami is wondering if there's a digital version of your series.
Yes, it's actually not on Etsy right now. If you check back, as soon as we're done here, I'll put it back up. You can buy the digital edition of Mary Sue for $5, the first 2 issues. Yeah.
And people, I did not kick Dean. I mean, I would, but I didn't this time. Just, he's making accusations in the chat. So I got to clear that up. I mean, who wouldn't kick Dean? So I have really enjoyed this, George. Thank you so much. Everybody, links to George's Indiegogo are in the chat and the description, as well as links to his Etsy, his Patreon, and his Twitter. If you subscribe to your Patreon, you get previews of the books that you're working on now, right? Not the Mary Sue, but the Tackle and the Olympus. Is that correct?
Yeah, and Bad Dreams, actually. Whatever comic I'm working on, like let's say I finish a page tomorrow, I will put it up on Patreon. So you can basically read whatever I'm working on for $1. And I think you can also see the back catalog as well of everything I've worked on that I've ever put on Patreon for $1. So I think that's a pretty good deal.
I think so too. Yeah, I'm going to have to go and do that.
Yeah.
I only back Pope Fire on Patreon. So
okay.
Yeah. So I will have to make an exception for you, George.
Thanks. I hope I think it's worth it. I'm not a huge Patreon person, but it's just one more way to keep people reading my stuff, I guess. I want to try to accommodate like every financial level, let's say. Like if I was a consumer, I didn't want to spend a ton of money on a single book, but I'll give $1 just to see what the story is. So yeah. I hope, I think it's a decent deal.
I think so too.
There's always Twitter if you're not sure about my stuff.
Yeah, I got that in the description as well. And I think Dean dropped it in the chat somewhere along the way. So thank you so very much. I've really enjoyed this. I feel like I've learned a lot.
I appreciate the invite, really. Thanks again for giving me your precious time.
Oh,
I'm amazed.
No, not at all. I've been wanting to chat with you for a long time, and things just kind of get a little weird and out of control, and time and all that kind of stuff. So
I hope I didn't ramble too much. Next time we'll go more back and forth.
Yeah, next time we'll discuss what it's like having to work with lots of women in the workplace.
I actually did want to ask about that. That's a shame. We were talking about that before we went live, if anyone's wondering.
So everybody in the chat, have a great night. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you later.
Yeah, thanks for listening.